Matt Mcleod is a registered dietitian, a former natural bodybuilder, a professional fitness and nutrition coach, amateur furniture assembler, and the inventor of the beverage trifecta. Welcome to the podcast, Matt.
Thank you, man. That's for sure the best intro that I've ever had. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
So let's get right into the important stuff first and tell everybody what the beverage trifecta is.
Okay. So if you're ready for your life to be changed, make sure you listen closely. All right. So the trifecta just happened naturally because one of my favorite hobbies is going out to eat. I love going out to dinner. I love hanging out with friends, family, beautiful women. It's just like I love going out to eat. And so what I realized is that every time that I went out to eat, I would order 3 different drinks. And the drinks that I would order would be a water, a Diet Coke, and then usually some type of alcoholic beverage. And what I realized, and then of course using my using my college degree to the best possible of being a registered dietitian, I was like, oh, it just so happens that these 3 things, so essentially water and then a little bit of caffeine that's in the Diet Coke. So Diet Coke has about 46 milligrams of caffeine, not that I'm counting or anything, but 46 milligrams of caffeine. So that's going to be a stimulant, right? The water is going to be what hydrates you, right? And then the alcohol, typically for me, that's going to be like a red wine. That's going to be a depressant, but also it's going to, make you feel a little bit loosey-goosey, right? So all of these things combined, they work synergistically, right? So the caffeine is an upper, the alcohol is a downer, and the water makes sure that you don't like throw up at dinner or anything, right? So using these all at the same time, I've realized that's what gives me a very optimal experience whenever I'm out to dinner, which is already a very fun experience for me, but the trifecta takes it to another level. And so every time I go out to eat, I typically, I do get that. So I take a picture, I put it up on social media, and now everybody, whenever they go out to eat, they send me that as well. And I couldn't be more excited about it.
You know, when you study business, they tell you to try to make your niche as small as possible. Have you ever considered just making your website specifically about clients who want to partake in the trifecta?
It's a part of it. Like, you know, what's interesting is like this could make it into a broader topic, but I heard something the other day, and it was basically live the way that you want others to live, right? So instead of me like preaching to people or trying to be their guru or anything like that, it's just like my way of teaching others is just like, hey, this is how I do it. This is working for me. So maybe it can help you as well. And so I try to practice what I preach, right? Like that's the thing with all of my content and stuff, all of the ideas, everything, my podcast, everything is all selfish. It's all because it's what I'm trying to figure out myself. And I've just been lucky enough to have the background knowledge with my nutrition degree, and then also some experience with people, and then also my own anecdotal evidence throughout the years. Like I'm trying to figure this stuff out too actively, and luckily I just have those other things that allow me to communicate it in a somewhat smart sounding way to other people so that it can help them as well. So yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that about the niche, because it just my niche is myself. And I think that you can't have any better niche than that, to be honest.
Basically what you're talking about is being your authentic self. And I've never really understood people that, I mean, there's just people you meet that, you know, they're liars and they're not being themselves. And I've never understood how somebody can maintain that as a facade. Like, aren't you afraid you're going to trip up and you go down this path of pretending you are somebody you aren't? So it's just, I've never understood that, how people can do that. So putting yourself out there is always the best bet.
You know what it is, and I don't think it's most of the time people aren't trying to be, like con artists or anything like that. I think what happens is that people see other people in the industry that are living the life that they want to live, or putting out content that they think is similar to the content that they want to put out. And then they just kind of copy what they do, right? And so then it just kind of happens to be inauthentic, because it just, they're trying their best. They think that that's the path they should go down. And so they try that, but then it just doesn't come off as real. But it's tough though, because that can take years to to find your voice or whatever. It's like, that's also real quick. Can we cuss or no?
I don't care.
Okay. Just making sure. Yeah, because that'll happen sometimes. But yeah, so it's just like, I think people, their intentions are good usually. They're not trying to be con artists, but then that's just how it works out.
Yeah, I
So
agree with all that. And we're going to probably talk about this a little bit more because I do want to bring up social media a little bit later. But right now you're currently living in Kentucky, which I have to say I'm a little bit jealous of because you have access to all the great bourbons there that we don't have access to here. And I went through a big drought when we lived in Idaho, and all of the liquor stores were owned by the state, and it was even harder to get stuff. But recently you were here in Texas, just outside of where we live in Austin. How did you like Austin?
I really liked it. That was my second time in Austin. And this time I was able to view it in a different lens, since I have recently gone through a breakup. So I was with my ex-girlfriend for about 5 years almost. And so that's a pretty big life change. And so last time I was in Austin, I was visiting with the intentions of probably staying in New York City, which is where I used to live, right? And I lived with her. And so I didn't look at Austin. I didn't look around Austin in the sense of, oh, I could potentially live here one day, right? Because Austin is one of those places that are probably my top three places that I could see myself living in the future. And since going through this breakup, this next time that I just went here recently, I was able to view it in a different lens. And so I was able to keep my eyes open a little bit more and just notice the people and notice the restaurants and notice the scenery and just kind of get a more of a feel of the city. And I was also there for about a week. And I stayed 3 days kind of downtown with a friend group who was a little bit younger and a little bit more chaotic, let's say. And then the other 3 days I stayed with an older couple, and they were married. They had a house. It was more low key. It was on the outskirts of Austin, and it was very much needed after the first 3 days. But I was able to get a balance of both of these perspectives of Austin. And I think given the places that I've lived, so being Kentucky and New York City, Austin's actually a pretty good middle ground between both of those, because you still have the South, right, of Texas and that Southern charm to it. But then you also have the metropolis and the bigger business side of things and the new and exciting and kind of hustle of that city that is New York City, right? And so combine those together, and I feel like you have a little bit of Austin, Texas there. So yeah,
That's cool.
that's my long answer to why I liked it. I really did enjoy it.
Yeah, I can concur in all those things that you said. It's definitely a more progressive city when it comes to Texas cities too. So coming from New York, it would probably feel
Right.
more like a fit than San Antonio or maybe even Dallas. But
Sure.
yeah,
Sure.
that all makes sense. So
Yeah.
I've talked on the podcast before that I did a cut this summer leading up to my 43rd birthday, and I hadn't done a cut in about 2 years leading up to that. And I knew that I had a much better chance of sticking with it and reaching some sort of goal at the end of it if I hired a coach. So that was you. I hired you to help me get through that through that cut.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was not the most compliant client ever, but nonetheless, definitely reached some sort of goal at the end of it.
Oh,
And I was happy.
I've had much worse, John. So no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, you were great, dude. You were excellent, and I think I hope that you were happy with your results, because yeah, even given the lax parts of it, I still think you made solid progress, and I hope you were happy with the outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. I was definitely happy with the outcome, and I wanted to do it for a lot of reasons, but I always kind of like to do something like that leading up to my birthday, both to prove to myself and to other people that just because you're in your 30s or your 40s doesn't mean that the same principles of training and nutrition don't apply to you if you
Mm-hmm.
if you do them. I think a lot of people use their age as an excuse, and Blakely and I are both over 40, and it's not like we've been fit our whole life. We stay like this because we consistently do the things, and I
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
to prove that to people every once in a while and to myself, so that I
Yeah.
don't slip into
Absolutely.
that I'm getting old kind of thing.
Right. I thought it was cool too that because as you were messaging me through your client updates and stuff, you were having realizations about your own clients, right? Because obviously, yeah, you guys work with people too, and so whenever you go through the coaching experience as a coach, there's plenty of things, like just like if I hired a coach or something like that, I know that there would be plenty of things that I would see as well and be like, oh, okay, I forgot about this or this. Even though I've hired two coaches in the past, but it's been a while. But so I know that if I did it again, I would just see things through a different lens. But I thought it was cool that you were able to kind of capture these little lessons that your clients are probably thinking, but now you can more appropriately handle them in the future, hopefully.
Yeah. And specifically what you're talking about is just the level of time commitment and mental energy to logging everything that you eat in an app.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're faced with all these little micro decisions throughout the day of whether you're going to put that bite in your mouth and not log it, or if you're going to pour extra salad dressing on your salad but log it as one serving when you know it was two. And
Mm-hmm.
it was just a good reopening eye experience to get back in the shoes of a client and be like, you know, this, it's not just all about the numbers. These people are going through a litany of mental decisions every single day, and I need to stay sensitive to that for sure.
Yeah. And when's the last time that you actually tracked like pretty hardcore like that?
It would have been probably like March, April, May of 2019.
Okay. So yeah, a few
Yeah.
years. So even then, like, yeah, you got a nice little refresher.
Yeah. Still, I'm still very fluent in the app because I look through my clients' food logs all the time, but getting
Right.
back into the habit of logging. But it's also eye opening too, just to, after you eat in maintenance and intuitively for a long time, to kind of see where your actual calories and macros are coming in addition to all the psychological part of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. Well, good. Like I said, I hope you enjoyed it, because you're definitely a pleasure to work with. So yeah, I don't want to turn this into a advertisement for my coaching. But
No, it's all good.
if you go to mattmcleod.org slash, no, I'm kidding.
use coupon code digital barbell.
Yeah, yeah.
Receive
Seriously.
your first year free.
Perfect. Yeah, we need to figure that out. That's great. That's
So
great.
I mentioned that you're a registered dietitian. Tell our listeners what that means and what's involved in becoming a registered dietitian.
And how that happened.
Yeah, and why.
And how that happened. Yeah. So registered dietitian is going to be different than any type of like nutritionist or just a self-proclaimed personal trainer or nutritionist or anything like that. So you have to go to school. You have to get a dietetics undergrad degree, and then you have to go through 1,400 hours of a supervised practice in different sectors of nutrition. So like medical nutrition therapy in a hospital, or like community nutrition, where I worked with a school in their lunch program, right? And then I also did some diabetes counseling, like one-on-one. And so you have 1,400 hours of this supervised practice under people, and then after that is over, then you have to take the national board exam to become a registered dietitian. And I think even here soon, you're going to have your master's degree. So I actually slipped that one by, and I avoided a little bit more schooling there. So yeah, it's just there's a little bit more to it than somebody can't legally say that they're a registered dietitian unless they actually are. It's like the same thing as a nurse, right? You can't say you're a nurse unless you actually have the credentials to do so. However, you can say that you're a nutritionist or something like that, or some type of variation without any actual credentials. And it's just, that's just the reality of it. It's just, I'm not saying that there aren't nutritionists that aren't better than certain registered dietitians I know, because there definitely are, and vice versa. But however, most of the time, at least, if you go with a registered dietitian, they're going to have some type of filtering and things like that. But yeah, I chose the registered dietitian route because I was too stupid to become a physical therapist. Actually, that's what it was. Because I started off in kinesiology and exercise science, and then I realized my chemistry grades, they weren't where they needed to be. And the physical therapy at the University of Kentucky was pretty competitive, and so I was like, okay, I can either go back and retake all these chemistry classes that I absolutely fucking hated, or I could figure out something else. And so I was debating. I was like, okay, so I kind of want to either be a personal trainer or a registered dietitian, because I thought coaching might be in my future someday. And this was like my sophomore year in college. And then I realized, I was like, well, I don't need an exercise science degree to become a personal trainer, right? Like I can go work at LA Fitness or something just by taking some other random exam, right? That doesn't require 4 years of my time. And so I was like, well, I don't need that to become a personal trainer, but to become a registered dietitian, I am going to need a credential. And also the biggest thing was that it provided me a safety net. So I was mitigating my risk, because I didn't know if I was going to be a coach or not whenever I was a sophomore or junior in college. So I was just like, well, here's the thing. I'll become a registered dietitian. I can kind of kill two birds with one stone. If I want to become a coach, it's going to give me a leg up on my competitors. And of course, I'm going to learn quite a bit more. But then also, if everything goes to shit, I can take a step back. I can go work at a hospital or something. My mom works at a hospital. She could give me a job in like 3 seconds. And so she's pretty high up at the local hospital, but I don't want to do that. But I just
Yeah.
knew that, hey, if I need to, I can. And so luckily I started helping out a few people in college, a few of my buddies. He was in a fraternity. He got good results. He started telling a couple other friends, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. And by the time that I graduated college, I had enough savings and a full enough roster to where I could take it full time. And then whenever I went full time with it, then yeah, things started going even better. So yeah,
That's
I
that's
think I answered the
fantastic.
question. I think I answered it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I bet there's a lot of people who wish that their journey had kind of gone as smoothly as that. It really worked out.
I know
It really worked out well.
it sounds like it. Yes, for sure. But I spent a lot of time thinking about it, to be honest. Like I spent lots and lots of time. Where I got lucky was I realized that I was interested in fitness. That's the thing. That's what I got lucky for, right? Is because so many people don't figure out what they're good at and also what they enjoy at such an early age. And I found fitness because of high school football, right? I was kind of a smaller kid, just kind of tall and lanky, and I wanted to get bigger, stronger, and faster for football. And so that's whenever I got introduced to weightlifting, and then I started to see results there. I started to get bigger and stronger and faster. I started noticing other people noticing me, and then I realized, okay, the more that I learn, the better results that I can get. Because I was a natural athlete. I wasn't taking drugs or anything. I was like, the more that I learn, the bigger that I can get, the stronger, et cetera, et cetera. And so that kind of general quest for knowledge then turned into, hey, why don't I just I'm really enjoying doing this on my own with no, real benefit from it, no monetary benefit from it at least. And so why not just keep pursuing this? And so I found that. Then I became known as like the fitness guy or whatever in my friend group. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. So yeah, I think in that aspect, I really got lucky finding something that I liked.
Heck yeah. Yeah, for sure. This is a really good segue because, looking at your website, you've got a lot of, and just your experience in general, you have a great balance between, the formal education side and the practical experience, both in the training and on the nutrition side with people in real life. So let's pull out a common topic and hear from somebody who has the perfect balance of both the book smarts and the street smarts and get your opinion on it. All right.
Okay, let's hear it.
So what exactly is the deal with the possibility of women in particular getting bulky versus toned when it comes to lifting weights and their nutrition, how it all ties together?
Mm-hmm. Like,
From the mouth of Matt.
From the perspective of like women who think that if they lift weights, they're going to get bulky and heavy, or what exactly? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. And they want to get toned. They don't want to get bulky.
Sure. Right. So with men and women, what we have to realize is that women and men, might be surprising to some people, men and women, at least from what I know, I don't want to claim that I'm super up to date on research and things like that, but I do still try to follow along with the people who are. But men and women, they both, their ability to grow muscle mass actually isn't too far apart, actually. Right. I know a lot of people go towards the testosterone argument and things like that. And that, don't get me wrong, that definitely does play a difference. But the biggest difference between men and women is that women, so men's starting point is here, right? And then women's starting point is here, right? So women are just born naturally with less muscle mass than men, right? And so them, even if you have a guy and a girl lifting the exact same and everything, all the other variables are the same for 2 years, the guy is still going to have more muscle mass simply because he was born with more. And of course, there's a spectrum. This is more of a generalization. However, for the most part, women are going to have less muscle mass than men. And so I say that because in the sense that it's going to be hard for you still to build muscle mass simply just because you're at a disadvantage from the get-go. But my thing is just like that's always been with this is just try and see what happens. And I can promise you probably 9 out of 10 people are going to be very happy with the result of lifting weights. and just what it does overall for their body. And usually the reason why women tend to feel bulky they feel bulky and not tone whenever they start lifting weights is maybe that they don't watch their diet either. They just start to eat more, and maybe they're exercising more. So maybe their appetite's getting up a little bit. And so they just tend to eat more in general. So my bet would be that there would be a correlation between how much they're actually eating and then also lifting weights as well. And then they just kind of contribute that to the weights, as opposed to, or maybe, you might be gaining a little bit of fat and muscle, right, together. And so that's where the bulkiness can come from. But I would bet that if women would build muscle and also lose fat, that's kind of the toning look that they're looking for. And probably they would be happier with that. And then the last thing with this is just like, stop lifting weights. If you just so happen to wake up one day and you are bulkier than you want, and it's not because you have a little bit more body fat than you want, then just stop lifting weights. Your muscle will atrophy, it'll go away. And then that's like, it's the easiest thing to do. Just don't lift weights and you'll be fine. Right. In fact, like just go run or something, and it'll maybe even go away faster or something. Right. It's just like, I wouldn't worry too much about it, but I empathize with women who just don't, or not empathize. I sympathize because I don't know what they're thinking or going through. However, I realize what they're saying, right? They don't want to get bulky. I understand they want to tone, and I get that toning's not a real thing or whatever the fuck, but it's like, we get it. We know what, like as coaches, at least we know what they're trying to say. It's just like when people say clean eating, we know what the fuck they're talking about. And I get it that you don't want to label certain things or whatever, but for the most part, it's like, that's not the point that they're getting at. So you as a coach, you just have to be careful. Just like you're solving a non-problem. I get it that you're trying to educate them. However, like berating them or being condescending or calling them stupid or something because they said toning instead of muscle hypertrophy or something, right? It's just like, it's not helpful. So I think that what is helpful is hopefully what kind of I just said. And so it's just like, yeah, and worst comes to worst, just stop lifting and you'll be okay.
And even just bringing the awareness that the nutrition side of it is such a big component. Like a lot of people, this probably goes for men and women, think that, as long as I'm doing the part in the gym, I'm doing it, but not realizing that, that's only, 25 to 50% of the effort, and that the nutrition is really going to control so much of how your body changes, whether you're lifting or weights or not. So just to
100%.
Put men and women's mind at ease. There's not much chance of a huge physical change, positive or negative, happening in your body unless you include the nutrition part of what you're trying to do also.
Yeah. I know that's with the percentage wise with nutrition or training. I'm just like, it's 100% nutrition and 100% training because they do different things, right? It's just like, you can't assign a percentage to either one, but it's just like, yes, of course you can't, the thing is you can't eat your way to more muscle mass, right? If you don't lift weights and you just eat more, it's going to be partitioned to fat, right? Not muscle. And so ideally it's like, this is how to make sure you don't get bulky or you want to get toned or whatever. It's just like, one, probably hire a coach. And then two, just the more closely you monitor things, the better off you're going to be. Like if you're just monitoring progress and what things are happening, you can manipulate whichever direction you want to go. And again, you have the fail safe of just stop lifting if you really feel like you're getting too bulky.
Yeah. And all this stuff happens slowly. If there's no chance you wake up one day and you're like, shoot, I got too jacked.
Yeah. I'll let you know when that happens.
If there'd be a lot more jacked people walking around. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's move on to something else. So a lot of what we do in helping people with nutrition is, the scientific stuff, calories, metabolism, macronutrients, but a lot of it's not. I'm talking about the whole psychological aspect of it, the mental part. So why is making changes to your nutrition so hard when it comes to the mindset side? How's that for a small question?
Yeah. No, I like it though. Why is it so hard? Because food is delicious and we're lazy and we're evolutionarily wired to crave hyper palatable foods, very energy dense foods. Muscle is not evolutionarily an advantage. It's very energy expensive, right? Because our body, like your body doesn't want to be 6% body fat and be super jacked, right? It's like that takes more food. That takes a lot more food for it to use. And it's like it doesn't want to use that. It wants to get fat and plump and make sure that there's plenty of food always available. And you combine our evolutionary wiring plus the literal scientists who are trying to create foods that are absolutely like the most delicious thing we've ever had. Like we put it in our mouth and it's just like these are processed foods that are specific, like the crunch, the texture, the taste, the mouthfeel, the appearance, the marketing of the bags or the boxes. All of like these are literal scientists, both from like the food chemist and food scientist side of things. And then also you have the marketing as well, which is a whole other psychological thing. But they are literally trying to make us consume as much of this food as possible. And then it's also usually cheaper than, let's say, healthier foods. And it's going to be very easily ready to eat. And people are busy, and people have children, and people have bills, and people have a million and one other things to do besides worrying about how to lose body fat and count their calories and count their macros and figure out organic foods and know how to cook them and everything. So it's all of these things combined. Like if you wanted the broadest answer possible, it's like that. All of those combined, that's why it's so damn hard, honestly.
Yeah.
So it's a tough industry to be in to try and combat that, to be honest.
Yeah. And you didn't even bring up, kind of the non-food psychology part of it, maybe the part of nutrition and psychology that ties into the deeper underlying motivations of people and coping mechanisms and and behavior change in general. Like you have all these issues which are tough enough to start with, and then you have all the things that you just mentioned, making it even more difficult when you do decide that you're ready to try to make a behavior change.
And you have parents who don't know anything about this stuff either, raising kids, and they're just passing along those bad habits to their children. Again, it's like the parents are probably trying to pay their bills. They're probably most Americans, and like coming from Kentucky, it's like, trust me, I get it. Like what part of my food rotation was going to food deserts, like going to very rural Kentucky where these kids, like we brought them lunch every single day for their lunch program. And the kids would show up without shoes on, with dirt on their face. Like this is going to be their best meal that they had that day. Right. And they're going to they even want some to take home for later on for dinner and things. Right. And so it's just like, it's you think they're worried, they're concerned about trying to figure out the latest research on food and make sure that the food is whatever macronutrient balanced and organic and all these things. It's just like they're just trying to survive. A lot of people, they just have so many other things to worry about than this. And then not to even mention the coping mechanisms that go along with this, that food can serve with these individuals, with any in affluent or impoverished. Like it's both of them. It's fucking hard, man. Because also, lastly, we do this every day. It's a habit you have to do every single day, right? No matter what you are eating every single, I mean, unless you're fasting, but if you're fasting, then this probably is a non-issue, but it's just like,
or you're on the show alone.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just like, this is a habit that we have to do every single day. And so you have to have some, like with politics and things, it's like, I can have a non-stance on most things, but with food and eating, it's like, you have to make a choice every single day. And that choice is to steal a thing from James Clear. It's like, that's a vote to the type of person that you're trying to become, whether you realize it or not. And then you're reinforcing good or bad habits every single time you decide to eat. And so it's just, man, it's hard.
So a couple things came to mind while you were saying that. Just, one of the reasons that this whole nutrition game is so hard is because, like you said, you make hundreds of food decisions every day. It's easier to stick with a workout program where you only have to go to the gym once per day. You make that decision once and then you do the workout and you're done. But, you have to make, even in one meal, how much food do I put on my plate? How quickly do I eat it? Do I eat all of it? How many times am I going to chew it? Am I going to go back for more? All these, there might be 15, 20 decisions per meal. And it's It's a lot.
Exercise for people is typically, it's typically much easier. Yeah. And like, yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think it's because maybe you're going to train once a day. Some people, 3 times per week or something, and
Hmm.
you can look forward to doing that because it's a distressor, right? But most of the time for people to distress with food, it's usually not with a salad, like
Or meal
that's just the
prepping for
case.
the week.
Yeah, no,
I think
that's
I'm
not
gonna
super exciting.
wind down from a busy day with some meal prep.
Yeah, no, fuck no, that sounds
That's
awful.
not happening.
No, 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 definitely not.
Let's talk real quick about some of the content that you've got on your website, because you've got some real gold on there. You've got one great piece of content in a couple different places that you call the 10 stages of feeling stuck, which is just fantastic. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. I think a lot of people will think that Matt's inside your head when you read that. And then also you have some really good discussion about what you call the gray area. And this is something that I never put a name to, but certainly had a lot of conversations with clients about over the years. Can you tell everybody what the gray area is and why so many people are stuck in it?
Yeah. So the gray area, I realized after working with hundreds of people and then also just, going through these stages myself, right? The gray area is kind of whenever you have 1 foot in, 1 foot out with your goals, right? And that's what this is the person who and I get it. For the most part, it's like this is how a lot of people, at least if they're somewhat health conscious, go about their day to day. And I think for some periods of time, it is fine as long as your expectations match that, right? As long as you're aware, hey, right now I'm just kind of quote unquote like watching what I'm eating. I'm trying to get in a workout several times per week. I'm not following any type of specific plan. I'm not counting macros. I'm not counting calories. I'm just kind of watching what I eat. I'm doing my best. And that's fine. I've got other priorities right now that aren't fitness. But what happens and why the gray area can suck is when there's a mismatch between your expectations and what you're actually doing, right? So if you're just kind of quote unquote like watching what you eat and just nonchalantly going to the gym here and there, you're not following any real plan or anything like that, yet your expectations are, oh, I'm going to try and lose a pound of fat per week, right? Or I'm going to try and build some muscle, or I'm going to try and get a lot stronger on these lifts, right? It's like that's where the gray area can be tricky. And the gray area is whenever people have 1 foot in, 1 foot out, they're kind of half-assing their goals. And so what I say on my coaching page, I was like, hey, if you want these results, it's like, let's stop half-assing this. Let's not be in the gray area. It's either you're all in or you're all out, right? So we have to choose one or the other. And so if you're all in, like, let's do this. Let's get out of the gray area, and it's either black and white, right? And so that's whenever you can actually make the decision, hey, I'm going to start every single decision I make today is going to be with a priority being fat loss, for example. And so it's like this being in this more extreme area, so to speak, in this more kind of obsessive area for 12 weeks is going to be much better, and you're going to be much happier likely than if you're stuck in this gray area for 3 to 4 years or a year even, right? Because this is what yo-yo dieting is, right? It's kind of people are just in this gray area and they've been trying to lose the same amount of weight, or they've been quote unquote watching what they eat for years and years on end, and they just get frustrated. They just get fed up, right? And so that's why I'm just like, hey, you just have to decide. That's all it really comes
Mm-hmm.
down to is, hey, this is the decision. And it just so happens that it's much easier to make that decision whenever you're accountable to somebody else other than yourself, because it's very, very difficult to try and do this stuff. Again, talking about everything that we just talked about, it's very hard to combat all those things. One, especially whenever you don't have the knowledge, but then two, if you're only accountable to yourself, because as everyone probably knows, we are very good at self-rationalizing our way out of that salad and then getting the burger and fries over and over and over again. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of what I mean by the gray area. I want you to get specific with your goals, because that's the biggest thing with the gray area is that there's a lot of ambiguity, and ambiguity allows us to slip on our goals because we don't have any specific goals. So if we don't have specific goals, we can't fail. Right. But you also can't succeed,
Mm-hmm.
so
You're just stuck.
that's kind of the problem. You're stuck in this gray area, and that's what ends up making people so frustrated months and months, years and years on end. So it's just like, hey, let's fucking just buckle down for 3 months, 6 months, and let's get this over with. Let's try and get this over with. And then ideally we can transition into more of some type of sustainable eating where maybe you're not actively trying to lose fat or build muscle. You're just kind of living life. However, there's certain things that you can monitor to keep your certain feedback mechanisms that you can keep yourself in check so that you don't end up gaining the weight again. And ideally, everything that you learned within those 3 to 6 months, you can then use at least pieces of those habits and skills so that you can sustain that lifestyle, as long as you want.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I'm in total agreement with all that. I think one thing about being out of this gray area and being on one side or the other is, and maybe this happens more or you're less likely to fall in this trap if you have a coach, but even if somebody decides they're going to get out of the gray area, go over to the commitment side, if they don't have some accountability, it doesn't have to be they're paying a coach, but some sort of accountability, that it's going to be tough to stick with that the first time that you slip up. And I know you and I have talked about this before, but we're all going to mess up at some point, just like I messed up many times during my cut. But the key is to don't fall into that all or nothing trap and get right back on track. I still think that that's one of the most, if not the biggest thing that holds people back, even when they do make the decision to be committed and be on one side of the line. I'm assuming this is something you deal with your clients all the time also.
Yeah. I mean, that's 100% what it is. It's just that I've joked around about, like, my job is literally just the art of getting people back on track. Like, that's all it is. It's just the art of consistency, because it's just like, what you need to do. You're a coach, damn it. Like, what you need to do. I'm just here to make sure you keep doing it and you hit more than you miss. That's essentially all it comes down to. And that's what you're talking about with the all or nothing mentality. The reason that gets so many people is because they can go through these periods of, I'm going to buckle down, and then buckling down lasts until Friday, right? And then Friday comes, and then Friday happens, and then also Saturday happens, and they're just like, okay, screw it, I'll start back up on Monday. And then you just keep recycling, rinse and repeat this cycle, and that's how you end up spinning your wheels. That's how you don't end up making actually any progress. So it's just like, you have to, with the accountability, it's like you just have to figure out how to hit more than you miss. And the biggest thing with that is just trying to fail fast and getting back on track as quickly as possible after you screw up, because you're going to screw up, and that's okay. That's totally fine. That one meal or even a couple meals, that's not what's going to do you in. What's going to do you in is, missing 3 out of 7 days of the week and doing that every single week, and then possibly longer as well. So it's just like, how can we eliminate that, how can we miss smaller? And what I mean by that is, for an example, how can we, instead of, like, if you typically go until Friday, and then that's whenever your diet blows, and then you don't get back on track until Monday. So you miss on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Well, progress the next week, even if you went Friday and Saturday and you missed both Friday and Saturday, but then you got back on track on Sunday, right? Then you only missed 2 days. Well, that's still progress, right? That's still going to be progress. And then next week, what if you just missed on Saturday, for example, right? And then, so progress is going to be even better. But then what about if we planned in a free meal or something like that, right? On Friday night, so that you could kind of get that out, so you could get a little bit of a psychological boost. You can not worry about tracking that meal. You can go out, you can have fun, you can enjoy yourself, you can get some things that you been craving. But then right after that one meal, you got back on track on Saturday morning, for example. And then you nailed Saturday, then you nailed Sunday. And that's how you can start to build some real momentum. So instead of like missing bigger, how can we miss small? And even then, it's like, if you plan it, a free meal is not a miss, right? It's kind of just the next logical step to allow you to keep going and not have giant fuck ups.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the gist.
One of the approaches I take with this with clients is just reframing the way that they talk about the time frames of being off track. Like, if somebody comes to me on a Monday morning check-in and they say something like, I was off track this weekend, I'm ready to get back on track. So in their mind, they have turned 3 days, which, let's be honest, most people include Friday and the weekend. They've turned 3 days into one event. I was off track that one event. and I help them try to reframe the fact that like at any point during those 3 days, you have the opportunity, just like you said, to miss small and get right back on track. If you continue to lump multiple decisions and days together as if they all have to happen together, you'll never be able to actually get back on track after making one bad decision. You have to decide that every single decision is an independent event where you do have the opportunity to make the next right choice, no matter how bad the choice was before.
Yes.
And people will lump weeks, months, years into these timeframes when actuality it was thousands of decisions that could have been changed at any time. So
Right. Right.
I think we're talking about the same thing.
At any moment you have, and not even just like days or hours or minutes or whatever, it's at any moment you have the opportunity to begin again, right? Like you have the opportunity to get back on track whenever you want. And what you said is exactly right. These are not, this is not a domino effect, right? This is how people tend to treat these choices. You have the one choice, you knock over that one domino on Friday, and then so automatically Saturday and Sunday has to happen as well. But that's just simply not the case. You have a big line of dominoes, right? It's like that. They don't have a domino effect. You have an opportunity at every single one of those dominoes to then prevent the domino effect from happening, right? And so just I think that whenever people can realize and have that liberating moment where they're like, hey, I'm in control here, and I'm going to stop kind of telling these stories to myself that okay, I need to wait until Monday so that I can really buckle down and get back. It's just like, don't put so much pressure on yourself. Like it's fine. Like just if you had the meal, if you had the screw up, it's cool. Just get back on track as quickly as possible, and you're going to be okay. And just continually keep doing that over and over and over and over again, and try to not judge yourself so much. Because that's also what people can do as well. They're like, oh, I've already screwed up this whole week, so I'm just going to keep doing it as well. It's like the past does not exist, and the future is only an anticipation, right? So we just have now. Not to pull out my Zen hat on you, but yeah, that's how it is.
I think one thing people don't think about in those times where they're feeling quote off track is that they're going to get this dopamine hit and this reward in that instant as soon as they make a course correction. Like let's say they're at home and they're drinking that night, and they poured their fourth or fifth glass of whiskey, and they poured it, and then they decide, you know what, I don't think I need this last glass, I'm just going to go to bed, and they go dump that out. They're immediately going to feel better about themselves, and that's going to be a positive reward that incentivizes them to make that happen another time also. So I don't think people, they don't know that they're going to get that reward immediately and feel good about themselves.
I like that actually. And I do this somewhat subconsciously, and I haven't talked about this as much, but I feel like other people do it too. But just like, even if you, I mean, of course you always can have anything you want, right? Foods, drinks, whatever it is. However, I think that choosing to have the discipline not to do it, even whenever you can, that's whenever the real unlock happens. And that's whenever you have that real self-confidence, and you start to build trust in your ability to make future decisions, right? Even if it's something super small, like you said with the whiskey, please don't pour out the whiskey, but unless you pour it back in the bottle, that's okay. Assuming you haven't already drank out of it. But yeah, pour back in the bottle, save that. But it's just like, even with a cookie or something, like it's like, I've been eating Oreos, right? Just crushing some Oreos. And then I have the Oreo in my hand and I'm about to take a bite. And then I'm like, this is a moment for me to flex my discipline muscle. It's like, I really want to eat this cookie, but right now I'm going to choose not to do that. And just even that one little decision of, nope, I'm good, I'm going to put it back in there. That is a little bit of that's a win, right? And that is going to go towards your psyche for the future. And so trying to, this is of course, this is a scale. You can take it from that one little cookie, right, to then, also like hiring a coach or something, right? And then all of these decisions can be more regulated like that. However, with even just something as simple as that cookie, or maybe not having that extra glass of wine with dinner, right? Whenever you normally have two, maybe just stick with one that night. And it just takes that little momentum, that little snowball effect for you to start making better decisions. And then that's all our life is these little decisions. So if you can, again, hit more than you miss, that's what we're chasing.
Yeah, that's good stuff. People need to download this episode and listen to it a few times.
Yeah, there we go. Hell yeah.
Let's move on to something less serious, but also just as interesting. All right. So
Okay.
the very first picture that you posted on Instagram was
My
was a
bodybuilding
very
picture.
impressive flexing selfie back in
Yeah.
2012
Yeah.
when you were 6 weeks out from a natural bodybuilding show. When did you get bit by the bodybuilding bug?
it was it was it was that show. That was my, so I've competed in two natural bodybuilding shows. One was my freshman year of college, my very first semester in college, and then my last one was my very last semester in college. And so they were about 4 years apart, or maybe 4.5 years. But yeah, first semester and then last semester. So the first one I did, I had no idea what I was doing. Right, I did about a 12-week cut. I was already kind of like naturally lean, so it was it wasn't anything crazy that I had to lose, but I still wasn't anywhere near lean enough for. I was the leanest I'd ever been up to that point, but with bodybuilding shows, with natural bodybuilding shows, you got to be pretty damn lean. But I had a great time, and I had a lot of fun, and I came in fourth place. I did pretty good. Um, but it taught me a lot, and I was like, okay, well, I think I know what I need to do. And I was still very much into lifting at that time, and I really enjoyed it. And so then I competed again uh my senior year in college, and I actually ended up winning that time, because then I dieted for like 20 weeks or 22 weeks or something like that. Got super shredded. I won the overall, and then I won my pro card, and I was standing up on stage with the first place trophy, and I was just like, this is not what I really thought it was going to feel like. And I just, from that moment, I was just like, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore, because my goal was to win the pro card, right? I wanted to win the pro card. And then, like that was kind of my main goal. After that, I didn't know for sure, but so I won, and then it was just kind of somewhat underwhelming. And also, like, you're not making bukus of cash in natural bodybuilding. I don't know if you guys know anything about that, but there's not lots of money and sponsors. There's no Coca-Cola sponsoring your local bodybuilding show. But yeah, so there wasn't going to be a ton of money in it. And then also the guys that I were going to go up against, they could have been mid 30s or something. And just like in natural bodybuilding, unless you have super sick genetics, it's like there's not, because they're all in the pros. Oh, they're going to be lean. Don't get me. They're going to be very, very lean. But what they have on you is 10 years of training that you don't have.
Yeah.
So it's literally just a game of time. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to spend all of my time and effort on this thing and then not even get even like you the only reason you do natural bodybuilding is because you love natural bodybuilding. It's not because of the accolades or the trade-offs or whatever. It's like you can just do a photo shoot and get shredded and then not go through all of the pain of dealing with a bodybuilding show.
In the
So it's just
spray
like, yeah,
tan.
and standing in a mankini and on a stage oiled up with other men. It's just like you don't have to do that. And so that's kind of what I realized. And then it was also I realized that I wanted to focus on my business, and I graduated, and there was just other things that I wanted to deal with, more so than worrying so much about bodybuilding. So that was
Yeah.
the end of my bodybuilding career there.
Well, since you were there and you said you got shredded, and I saw the pictures on your Instagram and can verify that. I don't think a lot of people realize what is actually involved in getting that lean. I think, when I finished my cut with you back in July, we didn't do any kind of testing or anything, but based on pictures, I would guess I was somewhere in the 10% body fat range.
For
And,
sure. You were super lean.
and, natural bodybuilders, the good ones, get on stage in the single digits, more like 5-6%
Yeah,
body
you weren't
fat.
natural bodybuilding lean, but you were still pretty lean.
Right. So, what is involved? What kind of place do you have to go to? What do you have to sacrifice to get that lean? What does that feel like? Because I'm not going there.
Yeah, you have to go there, and it's just a longer period of time. That's all it is. Like, it's just a longer period of time. But then as far as the actual feelings themselves, it's just like you just constantly think about food. You just constantly obsess over, making sure you get in your workouts, getting in your cardio, getting in your macros, and then trying to make those macros as like delicious as possible, because you're on poverty macros, right? That's what they call it, where you barely are eating. I think the lowest I got down to was maybe like 1,500 or 1,600 per day. And that was pretty rough, to be honest. It was pretty it was pretty difficult. And at that point, my mind was just constantly focused on food. You just never get full, which is also very difficult because you're so excited to eat, and then you eat everything and you're like, oh, I could eat this whole meal probably 2 more times and still not be full. And so that's kind of the hardest part, is like you measure it all out, you have your meal, and then just whenever you get done with the meal, just imagine you never ate the meal. And that's kind of what it comes down to. Of course, you feel a little bit better for maybe about an hour or so, or 30 minutes. And then that's just the thing. But it's just, that's your body's natural mechanisms of ramping up your hunger, because they're like, hey, bringing a full circle to the beginning with the evolution. It's just like, we need that food. We need that extra fat on our body. We need those extra energy stores. And so your body is like, hey, dumbass, eat more food. And so it's forcing you to eat more. Well, it's trying to force you to eat more food psychologically by never allowing you to get full, essentially. And that takes even more time, even after the bodybuilding show, to go away. And it's tough. Like I said, you just have to really be somewhat crazy and like really want to go there, and like really like have that as your motivator, because I can promise you, getting abs is not going to be, you're going to give up so fast if your main motivator is like, oh, I just want to get really shredded for girls or something, or for guys, whatever. Right. It's just like, that feeling will go away very, very, very quickly whenever you're just constantly starving.
One of the things that I've talked about with clients that are getting pretty lean is, and I didn't really realize this till I did my first real cut back in 2019, was that once you get to a certain level of leanness, it kind of distorts your perception of what you're possible of, and what you kind of your self-image and your self-worth when you're at any body fat percentage higher than you were at your lowest. So, I could be walking around maintaining at 12, 13, 14%, which is still, quite a bit lower than what you just see the average person walking around at. But maybe my perception is that I feel I'm fat because I'm significantly less lean than I was at that lowest. So helping people reframe what is going to be a sustainable goal for them of leanness versus just what is the leanness you can get. And I warn them that you're going to alter your perception of what normal is by getting down to a certain level of leanness. I can imagine, and doing a bodybuilding show could really do that to people.
I think yes, for sure. Definitely in some people, specifically people that get a lot of their identity from their body and their self-confidence from their body. Luckily, I still do that to some point, but it's like, I can kind of keep that in perspective. As I gained a little bit more fat, I was still, okay with my body and things. I think what it did actually for me was, I had to, sometimes like you have to go there to realize that's not what you want. It's the same thing with like getting rich, I feel like, and buying the fancy car and the fancy watch. It's like, you can't tell that to a poor person and be like, hey, listen, money's not going to make you happy, dude. Like you're going to get that Ferrari and then you're just going to feel empty inside. It's like, sometimes you have to go to the extreme so that you can appreciate the quote unquote normal, right? That middle ground. And so that's what I think bodybuilding really did for me. It's just like, hey, I know the sacrifices that it takes to get there and to walk around there. And I know that the payoffs aren't really worth it. And so for me, I'm able to frame that in my head, like, hey, and don't get me wrong, I still look at old pictures of me all the time from college and bodybuilding and stuff. And I'm just like, gosh, damn, that looks like it's like that. If I could just get the body look of it, like that would be cool. Right. But of course, that you can't just do that, right? You have to be in the gym 6 days a week. You have to be tracking everything. You have to sacrifice so much, right? Like I was spending 2 hours in the gym like 6 days a week because I was in college and I could, and I had time to do that. And it's just like, now, obviously I don't want to do that, nor could I do that. So it's just like, for me, the trade-offs aren't worth it, but I had to go there to realize that.
Yeah. This is a little bit of a tangent, but, we had another guy, another nutrition coach, Alex Mcleod, on the podcast, and he had a really interesting way of looking at plateaus. And I'm not saying like if you get lean and then you go back up to a higher body fat percentage, you're in a plateau. But if you get really lean and you can't maintain that, but you find something where you can maintain and you're happy there, you should be thrilled about that, because you now have the skill set and the habits to maintain something that's healthy and also that you like, that you live with. So you can celebrate the fact that, you might not be as lean as you have ever been, but it's sustainable and you like your life. There's something to be said for that a lot.
There has to be trade-offs, right?
Yeah.
Unless like, I mean, well, even if I was going to say, even if you're on gear, like even if you're on drugs and things, there's going to be trade-offs there with, you know, with your health or, you know,
Yeah.
safety or legal or whatever it is, you know, those are still going to be trade-offs. And so, yeah, I think you have to find that balance of, hey, okay, how can I be happy with how I'm looking without, you know, sacrificing my entire life to be there. And that's like my content in a nutshell, at least what I try to do, because I'm trying to find that balance of, hey, how can we do the least amount of work possible to get the most results possible. So yeah, that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah. Well, I have a whole other page of notes here, but I want to be respectful of your time. We've already been rolling almost an hour, so I'll save them for the next time. But definitely,
I can talk.
No, I think people are really going to like this. I've definitely given me some things to think about, and I will definitely save the things that we didn't get to for the next time if you're down for it.
I would love to. I'm more than happy to, and thank you so much for having me on. I hope people got a little bit out of it.
Yeah, why don't you tell people where they can find you both on the web and on your social media before we kick this thing off?
Sure. So I have a podcast called the More Than Fitness Podcast. Each week I have 2 episodes. One is a shorter mini-sode where it's typically around a specific nutrition or exercise topic. And then I have a guest sometimes, or I do a solo, but when the other longer episodes are going to be more just kind of conversational. And I talk more about life in general, how to live a good life, how to manage priorities, how to manage emotions, how to make better decisions, relationships, whatever it is. It's typically not as fitness focused, hence the More Than Fitness Podcast, right? I talk about what I want to talk about, and that's essentially it. So yeah, that's the More Than Fitness Podcast. And then you can find me on Instagram as well. I'm usually pretty active there. So that's at Matt Mcleod 6. So MattMcleod 6. And you can send me a DM, say hello. My website's mattmcleod.org, MattMcleod.org, because I'm fancy like that.
And if you go looking for Matt's podcast, the thumbnail is a picture of him with some sort of furry animal. What is that?
It's a sheep in Iceland. It's a sheep. I was in Iceland. I also have longer hair too.
Yeah.
I'm just like, it's such a good picture. And it's so like, people are always like, oh, it's the sheep guy, you know? And I'm just like, now it's just a branding thing. And I'm just like, fuck it. I'm just going to keep it up there. But yeah, that was on a legit sheep farm in Iceland. So yeah, the people were like, oh, I thought that was Photoshopped. I said, no, that's a real picture with a real sheep. So yeah, that's it. That's where you can find me.
That's good branding.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, man. Well, thanks again for your time. And thank you guys for tuning in. We'll check you out next week.
Thank you, man.
Let me stop the recording. Shoot, if I can figure out how.